obviously know, to consider a site plan approval for the proposed construction of a hardware store, possibly some type of restaurant or other facility associated with it that might involve food services, and that's generally why we're here. The process is it's a permitted use in town. Given the fact that it's in the village zone, they require, or the zoning administrator can't issue a permit until the planning commission has done a site plan review and issues a site plan approval. The details with respect to site plan approval are in the zoning ordinance. They're fairly specific. One of them having to do with traffic in and out. The other having to do with the aesthetics with respect to how it affects the area that it's in, the village. And I would think that those would, you know, the fact that they have enough parking and you can get into some landscaping and things of that nature. But that's what we're here to view. And so with that in mind, maybe what I'll do is turn it over to Daryl and Lucy, who are the applicants, and have them run us through maybe a walkthrough of some sort so we can kind of get a sense of what the site is and what you intend to do to the site.
Okay. As Marcel said, our intent is to tear down the existing building and push it back where we'll be starting the beginning of the building will be on where this one ends on the back side. It's going to be a 9,600 square foot building, and on the large parking lot side will be, as he's talking about, the restaurant slash retail something over here for 2,100 square feet, and the hardware store will be on this end of the building. The plan is to build a metal frame building that's going to resemble in some ways a barn. It's going to have a barn red color as our plan at this time, and the siding, it's going to be insulated lock panels, which will be like a stucco type of appearance as opposed to being a corrugated metal building, which we think will be a lot nicer look, and it'll be finished panels on the inside as well.
I mean, I know that your site plan that you submitted with your application, you know, gets into some detail with respect to parking and how people plan to get in and out.
Yep. The thought is that they'll access from Route 30 here. There'll be parking, some parking here in the front. There'll be parking here. The center drive will still be open for a drive. And then there'll be tons of parking out in the back, obviously. We hope to provide a service to the people of the community so that they don't have to run to Manchester. For the contractors that are here in town, we're hoping to provide for them.
I think when I looked at the site plan, I commented on the fact that it looked like there was a lot of parking that you've made available, and I, you know, neglected to kind of think through the thing about the restaurant. So obviously a lot of that parking relates to that, not to mention the square footage involved in your retail space that, right, you know, the regulations require one spot for every 200 square feet, and then whatever you got going on for the restaurant.
Right.
So the parking lot, as it's depicted on the site plan, looks a bit overwhelming, but it's basically designed to meet the requirements that we have in our regs.
Correct.
Do you have any plans for these spruce trees that are here?
They're all going away.
Okay. And did you, I mean, I think that in our preliminary discussions with respect to getting ready for you guys to apply, there was some discussion with respect to accessory buildings, and can you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yep. Obviously we have an expectation to sell mulches and topsoils and potting soils, and so to keep that so it's not unsightly, we're going to build a pole barn, a 20 by 40 pole barn out on the back side of the property. That'll be closed on the two ends so that the stuff will be accessed from the two sides, so to keep it more in a neat and orderly fashion.
And what do you visualize your hours of operation to be?
The plan would be from 7 a.m. in the morning until 5:30, the same as we run over at London Area Hardware. And that will be Monday through Saturday, and Sundays would be 9:30 to 2:30. Lighting, it's going to be down lighting from the overhangs, the underhangs, if you will, overhangs. I guess.
From the soffits.
And we're planning on, again, having some accent lighting out on the front of the building, just to, again, tie it in to make it look like a barn, if you will, type of a look. The parking lot lights that are out back, the big ones that Haig put in for something. The thought is that
Beach volleyball.
for beach volleyball. The thought is that we could utilize that for when we get into the winter hours, during winter hours, so people have a light to get out to their vehicles if they need to. But they'll only be operating while the businesses are operating.
So those high parking lights won't be on after hours for theft, deterrent, or anything like that?
No. It'll be only during business hours.
Well,
And again, I just want to keep
we
it
want
safe
to
for
sort
people.
of clarify the business hours end of things. If there's a restaurant in there,
Right.
we're not really sure when the
Question, what
business
the
hours
restaurant-
are.
Right.
And again, it may not be a restaurant. I mean,
And that's a consideration that's why we're having a site plan review, to, take those kinds of things into consideration.
If
So-
it's excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
For it to be a restaurant, somebody's going to have to come in and want to put a bunch of money in. We're not going to build the infrastructure for a restaurant. We're going to build the shell, and then we're going to offer it to whomever. We're getting the water supply, the septic, we're getting that all planned so that we have it in the event somebody wants to come in and put a 50-seat restaurant. But we're not planning on building a kitchen and putting all of that in. So it's a lot of money to put in a restaurant. So it would have to be somebody that really wants to do that for that to happen. To us, it probably would be easier for someone to come in and put in something else retail. Certainly a deli. Somebody could put in a deli, and that could work. But again, that would be, regular business hours.
Now you're gonna dig up the old septic system?
That's Dave.
so just sort of off the top of my head here, in the spirit of what we're doing, it seems that I'm not sure if the Planning Commission at this point in time could incorporate into their site plan approval an approval for restaurant, whatever may be coming, since we don't know what it is.
exactly.
So I think that just to make everybody aware, it might be prudent on our part to just take into consideration what we know is proposed, which is the Lincoln Maples hardware store. And anything that would come in the future with respect to restaurant, retail, whatever it may be, potentially would involve another site plan approval, at which time we could deal with lighting the parking lot and et cetera. I think it would be prudent on our part to do that, rather than give an approval for something we don't know what exactly is happening.
Well, I heard you say something. Let's define hardware store a little bit, right? So I hear mulch, topsoils. That instantly to me means there's going to be some heavy equipment, bobcats, something to load this kind of stuff. Okay, lumber. What else are you considering in the back? It's kind of my point. And how do you assess, since we have the house right next door here, how does the water runoff with all that kind of affect my well system, which is right up on your property line here? Has that been taken into account by anybody? With soils and topsoils and all that kind of, whatever you may have. I don't know what you're going to have. That's why I'm kind of looking for a definition of a hardware store.
Are you thinking it's going to be mounds, or are you?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, it's not. It's
Okay,
bags.
all
It's
bag.
All
Okay,
bag.
That's
Yep,
a big one.
all bags.
obviously.
All bags.
It's all bagged, and I'll have a forklift.
Okay.
So for restocking purposes.
So not bulk purchase dump trucks
No,
in there with cubic
no.
yardage at a time and stuff like that.
And all I'm planning, for lumber,
Yep.
all we're planning for lumber is on the back of the hardware store.
Yep.
We'll have some outside attached to the building racks where we can have some, and I say some, 2x4s up to 2x12s, pressure treated 2x up to 2x12s.
Standard stuff.
But not a lot, because I'm not going to be we are not going to be in a market of competing with RK Miles. We aren't going to do
Well,
that.
that's, obviously one of the reasons we're here is the rumor mill that's right there, right? We hear, oh, it's going to be an RK Miles. Heck, I've heard it's going to be an Applebee's. I've heard a million different things. Like, are you kidding me? What is going on here? So,
We're not in a position to do that. We're too old to do that, quite frankly.
We're too old to do this.
So, we think that it's a business opportunity for us here, and that's why we're jumping into it. But again, it's a convenience type hardware store that we're after. We're not, like I said, we're not planning on trying to compete with the big boys. We're not.
It's going to be very similar to Londonderry Hardware.
the product, and not the look, obviously,
No.
that's a strip mall
Yeah,
statue,
yeah.
but the product
The
offering.
product,
Correct.
yeah. Where it will, same supplier for the most
And I
part.
think it's important to say, and you guys can, obviously the reason that you've done what you're doing is out of consideration for the input that you've received over the time that you've been questioning us
Correct.
about it, with regard to materials that are for sale, etc. And so the concern on our part, when they have come to us, Lucy and Daryl have come to us at planning commission meetings, kind of telling us, hey, this is what we're thinking, what do you think, blah, blah, blah. The idea would be that planning commission has been sensitive to the fact that it's in the middle of town.
Yeah, okay,
And
right, good.
in that spirit, Lucy and Daryl have put their plans together in such a way so that they're not going to be using the site as a place to store stuff, topsoil, all the things that they can't reasonably load in pallets inside their store, which is one of the reasons they're having the pole barn. So we don't visualize, the planning commission doesn't visualize, and we'll make sure that in the permit or the site plan that we issue, we're specific about that.
Okay.
Of piles of stuff.
Yeah.
Laying around waiting for somebody to buy it. I mean, it's either going to be in the pole barn or it's going to be potentially displayed. The porch, there's going to be a porch here, according to the plans, right? And on the porch will be bags that you could come and grab 3-4 bags and go and do
Barbecue,
your business.
maybe
And if you needed a truckload, or you needed more than that, then, Daryl would go out and help load whatever you need onto the back of your
Bagged
vehicle.
again, yeah.
Yeah, the bags.
All
Yeah.
bagged.
So it's not like a loader loading stuff into a dump truck.
Okay,
And as far as the lumber goes, basically it's just for the homeowner who has a small project going on. But what we're hearing from the contractors is, we got to go to RK Miles for 2 2x4s that we, ran short on. So that's all we're trying to fill is that hole. We're not trying to do anything major.
I think the other, sorry, go ahead, Pat.
How about other materials that you would store outside or other things? I mean, are you going to get into plants, flowers? I'm thinking of Aubuchon down
Yeah,
there.
Lucy and I have talked about it, and to be honest with you, you've got Homestead right here. You got the other floor shop just down the road. I mean, it's not really
Right.
a
Doesn't
piece
make
that
sense
we're
to us.
interested in jumping into.
And Adirondack chairs, I mean, I know what you have out there. You put
Right.
those up. Everything outdoors would either be in the pole barn or on the porch?
Correct.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
We're not going to be spreading it around the property.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the things that we've talked about on a preliminary basis with the applicants, was the concern we had over that it wasn't going to be a sprawl of stuff laying out there waiting for something to happen. And to that end, that's why I mentioned that we're visualizing products to be displayed on the porch, which isn't in full view of Route 30, so it's kind of like, more or less out of the way, if you will. And the stuff on the other side of the building, the lumber notably, is going to be in an overhang, which in itself will be screened so that when you're driving through town, you don't see that. And the pole barn should take care of all the stuff that they have that we don't want stored outside. It's also important, I think, to mention that the evolution of this, because of the town of Winhall has floodplain regulations in effect. And as a consequence of those, the floodplain regulations include a provision for what's now called a river corridor. So the concern, and this is a state requirement, and the concern on the part of the state was that they didn't want to see any substantial development taking place in a river corridor. So when we got the application, we were, based on the maps that we have, we were we interpreted that it was in the river corridor. And so, as a consequence of that, the process in the floodplain regulation would have required this to be a zoning board of adjustment process where they get a conditional use permit. And we forwarded the information to the floodplain manager, the state floodplain manager, and he looked at it and indicated that he wanted to bring a river specialist down. And we had a meeting with the river specialist and the floodplain manager on site, and their determination was that given the rules that are in effect with respect to the river corridor, this did not fall into the river corridor. So they had, essentially the floodplain manager and the river corridor person essentially indicated that they would have, no input into what is going to happen here. It's not in the floodplain, so there's no danger of, this getting flooded out. So it's one of the reasons why the process changed. So, and the way it changed is that the zoning administrator essentially had to do the same thing. She had to deny the permit pending site plan review. And the site plan review is very similar to what the ZBA would do with respect to a conditional use permit in terms of what it needs to consider. So there's really no difference in the standards associated with it. It's just a matter of whether the zoning board of adjustment reviews it or the planning commission reviews it. So that's why we're here. You want to take a walk around and kind of show us what you got? Pole barn location, parking lot. You might want to speak to any screening you're intending to do, or plantings, or whatever would be relevant to our better understanding of what you're doing.
Okay. Probably be easiest to go out this way.
Sure. We'll follow you, Daryl.
It's good for the community. There's some concerns, obviously, being an abutting property, that you just want to keep the noise down, the aesthetics for what the community should stand for and want. But overall, you want to see a thriving business come here, employ some people, and help out the community. So after we get a look at the plans and see what the access egress is, we'll know more about what we're looking for. So.